Hey, what's going on? You're listening to Our Children, Our Future. I'm your host, Drake Pearson. This is the podcast you need to listen to if you're at all concerned about the world your children will inherit and what you can do about it. Today, we're talking about screen time. Is it good? Is it bad? I think you know what I'm about to say. But I was just watching the congressional hearing with Facebook, Snapchat, X, formerly Twitter, and all the other major social media companies, TikTok, right? And I found it really interesting. They were talking to these social media giants about how they're doing nothing at all to help children or to help those who have been harmed by the exploitative material that is out there on social media, uh, material that is seeking to exploit minors. Okay, I'm not going to go into any further detail on it than that, but it is very sad to see just how much is out there that hurts minors and just how little these social media giants are doing about it. And a lot of these parents are very upset and they want to sue these media giants, but unfortunately, they have special protections that allows them to not be sued by these media or by these parents, right? And so here's something to consider, because one of the points that was being raised was just how addictive these social media platforms are. These social media platforms are super addictive. We all know that, right? But it's to the point now where it's basically like drugs. It is very much like drugs. If you look at what is going on with these children who are looking at these screens all the time, it is very much like a very addictive drug that draws you in, and it is very hard to escape, very challenging to escape. And we tend to look at drugs in our society kind of downcast. We look at it a little like, yeah, you really shouldn't be doing that, right? And here are all the reasons why, or at least some major reasons why. It actually separates you from society. You kind of are withdrawn. You are off, zoned out in a corner. When you're off your drugs, you are aggressive and you tend to be very volatile. No one can predict what you're going to do except that you just want to get back to your drugs. And unfortunately, if you watch a small child with a tablet, they are very much like someone who's on drugs. They are addicted to their tablet. They are off, secluded from others. They don't want to interact with others when they are, zoned into their tablet. They become very aggressive and volatile when you take the tablet away from them. All they care about throughout the week is, hey, can I get more tablet times, more screen time, more, they're just focused on this one track mind. And unfortunately, what this is leading to is something called virtual autism. Now, check this out. Okay. I want you to consider this question. If for whatever reason you found that your child was experiencing autism like symptoms, right? And perhaps you may even think they have autism, right? Would you, if given the opportunity, if you found out that it was coming from something you were doing or allowing to happen in your household, would you stop that thing to stop their autism? And the reason why I ask that is because there is this term now called virtual autism, which is autism like symptoms being induced by the use of screens, the use of screens for toddlers, 0 to 3 years old, when they have extensive screen time, when they have a lot of screen time. And you might think, well, what is a lot of screen time? There are studies that show that an hour a day is a lot of screen time for someone under the age of 4 years old, right? And so 0 to 3, if they are getting a lot of screen time and they are essentially having this habit of getting on screens, a lot of these children are developing symptoms that are very much like autism, where they don't want to interact with others. They have a hard time communicating with others. They're not looking at others in the face. Things like this. They get upset very easily. They only want certain conditions or can only function well with certain conditions, and that is when the screen is in front of them. Now, I want you to imagine if you're a parent of a child who's experiencing symptoms like this, where it is very hard to communicate with them and they are very volatile in their emotions, and you're thinking that they have autism, and perhaps maybe even a doctor has said, yeah, they've got autism symptoms. Well, if you're experiencing that, what are you more likely to do? take away the thing that is soothing them, being the tablet or their phone or screen or whatever it is, their show, remove that? Or are you more likely to let them keep that because it's the thing that keeps them calm? And I think we all know the answer here. Most parents are more likely to leave them alone with a screen, with their tablet, with whatever device that they're using. And they're doing it because it's more out of sympathy. This child, this is the thing that keeps them calm. And I don't want to remove that from their life. They don't have much other things to do in this life. And, they're experiencing these autistic symptoms, and I don't want to make their life harder than it needs to be, which is a very understandable position. But unfortunately, what they're saying about this virtual autism is that that is actually causing these autistic like symptoms. And not only that, the more that they are engaged in the habit, not necessarily that they have to be looking at the screen all the time, but if they have the habit of going on the screen every day, they're going to continue to exhibit these same symptoms. And so it becomes like a self-feeding vicious cycle here, right? And so uh, I'm urging you, if you're a parent of a small child, you need to really consider that they are on a screen. If they're on a screen, you need to consider removing that from their day-to-day life, right? If they're watching shows, and I was watching this one parent talk about how the show Coco Melon is so addictive, and here's why you shouldn't let your child watch this show, because it has cutscenes that are very fast-paced, and the music is very hypnotic, and it's meant to draw the child in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then he went on to say, so instead, I recommend these other shows. And the problem is, it's not necessarily Coco Melon itself. It's the fact that you're allowing your child to watch a screen all day long. And here's what we found out. They've done these studies where they will set up a child in front of the screen, and they're watching like Miss Rachel or something like that, whatever the popular show is. And a lot of parents will say, this is good for my child because they're learning from this show. But they've done studies where they've shown if they set a child up in front of this show, or if they have a parent talking to their child using the same words that might be in the show, or they have a parent that's sitting with their child watching them watch the show, etc., what they found was the parents who are talking to their children just using the same words that were used in the show over a course of weeks, those children at 2 years old are learning these words. They're actually learning. They're actually able to point out what they're talking about. Versus the children who are just sitting there watching the show, they're not learning the correlation between this word and what it represents. They're not actually learning that thing. And it just kind of, they're just in a trance. They're just watching. They may repeat some of the things that they see on the show, but they're not learning the correlation. They're not learning that it actually has any sort of real physical impact in their lives. They're also seeing that the children that are sitting with their parents watching these shows, they're not any better. They're not getting any better than the kids who are just watching by themselves. And so what this tells us is parents play a huge role actually in the child's development. Hey, wouldn't you know, right? But parents play a huge role in the child's development and their education, meaning that the credit that screens get is maybe too much, definitely too much, as far as what your child is learning and how they're developing and how they're growing up in this world. Parents leave way too much to the screen. Now, don't get me wrong. I can understand on a long car ride or something like that, there are certain instances when it makes sense to, hey, let's watch a movie, right? But you have to be aware of, what is this movie telling my child? What is this story really trying to tell to my child? What is the moral here? What would I learn from this? If I were taking notes on this story to say, yes, this is the moral of the story, this is the message that is being sent to the child, what is that? And that is very important. And unfortunately, a lot of people take that for granted. A lot of people take that for granted because it's just a cute story. It's made by Disney. It's made for children, etc. Let me tell you something. Children's shows are not made for children. Now, don't get me wrong. They are made for the entertainment of your child, right? They're definitely meant to draw in your child, but they're not made for the benefit of your child. They're not made essentially to support the development for them to develop values. It's not made for that. It's made to entertain your child and to take their attention. And potentially, when you have a child's attention, you can develop that into consumerism. You can sell them a product at the end. You can sell them, hey, you're really familiar with this Disney princess or with this cartoon character, whatever it is. And now we're selling this for 25, 45, $50, whatever it is. And as you become an adult, you're constantly addicted to these images and these characters because it's what you had as a child and you developed such strong feelings towards them. This was McDonald's model from the very beginning. That's why they have a kid playpen in a restaurant, why they were giving out Happy Meals. Why did they call them Happy Meals? Why they had all these commercials with a clown and everything. It was to attract the child and give the child warm, fuzzy feelings. And those warm, fuzzy feelings could be turned into a lifelong customer. And that's exactly what they've done, right? We all know the food at McDonald's is not necessarily healthy. It's definitely not healthy. We also all know that it's not necessarily tasty. We're just addicted to it, or certain people are addicted to it, right? I remember going to McDonald's. It was delicious when I was going. And then when I stopped going and I went back, I said, how did I ever eat this? Right? So here's the problem. The problem is that most parents are unaware that this cycle exists where they're actually inducing autism-like symptoms into their child. And it's having major effects on the development of the child. Aside from just the autistic-like symptoms, the major effects that it's having on the child is that they're developing much slower than their peers who are not having all this screen time. The peers who are not on the screens all day long, or even for an hour a day, or even for 15 minutes a day, those peers are actually developing at a much faster rate. And they're not doing anything really fundamentally different other than the screen time. And aside from that, what you might be thinking, well, in what ways are they developing? They're better communicators. They're more able to see somebody's face and recognize the emotions that that person might be feeling, or they might be able to speak more effectively, learn quicker, recognize words more effectively, all these things that are important to the development of your child. A lot of people talk about the social aspects. When people say, hey, why don't you educate your child at home because they'll get a better education at home. We know that is fact. Everyone should know this, but most people are aware of this. And most people's argument is, well, what about the social aspect? Well, why don't we take that question to the screen time? What about the social aspect? You are delaying your child socially. And here's the rub. The rub is this: everyone else is doing it. So it seems fine. It seems normal. But imagine, if you will, for just a moment, if you were in a position of power, wouldn't you want everyone else around you? If you were in the position of power and you wanted to take advantage of that, let's say you were the type of person that wanted to take advantage of that, wouldn't you want everyone else around you to be delayed? Wouldn't you want them to have these limitations or restrictions in their ability to communicate with others? I think you know the answer to that, right? And so what I'm saying is, right now we are having a society that is being developed in a way that is not beneficial to them. It is, in fact, detrimental to them. If you want your child to develop, don't look to a show to do that for you. If you want them to develop in education and learning, again, there is a time and place for entertainment, but even for a small child, they don't need to be entertained through a screen. There are so many other ways they can be entertained that actually support their development, that will actually support them in life, just in general. And they'll have so much fun doing it, playing with other friends, playing toys with you, mom or dad, right? Playing in so many different ways. Learning about the world is actually very enjoyable for a child because they're learning something new. It doesn't have to come through the screen. The problem with screens, or why it seems like children like screens more, is because they are addictive in nature. That is their whole job. Is if you look at all these social media companies, we know they've poured billions and billions of dollars to try and find out, how can we make this experience of you staring at this screen so addictive you never want to leave. That is their whole job. They've put so much money behind that, and they've done a really great job. You see everyone from young to old on TikTok, just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and they can't get out. It is so addictive in nature. Even if you know what's happening, it draws you in. It draws you in. And so your child, if you're allowing them to determine their own screen time, I've seen some parents say, I let my own child regulate their screen time under 4 years old. And I'm thinking that is a terrible mistake. That is such a terrible mistake because they don't stand a chance against the science that or the billions of dollars that was poured into figuring out how can we get you to stay longer. What are you staring at? Okay, we'll send you more material that looks like this. Okay, we'll send you more that has this sound in it. We'll send you more that just keeps you sucked in so you can't leave. And people are talking about these Apple Vision Pro goggles and the metaverse and how we're heading towards the metaverse. Man, if this is any indication of what that will be like, I'm sorry to say we have a very bleak future ahead. There are hard times coming up ahead because what we are doing is we are creating consumers. And you may have heard that phrase, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. And I'm here to say, why don't we break out of that cycle? Because it doesn't make sense that a strong society or an effective society, a good society, would go on to create weak men or weak society members. It doesn't make sense. Why would we allow that? That means we're not doing our part in educating the next generation effectively, supporting them to actually understand. And you might think that's not possible. They have to go through those trials and tribulations. They have to, experience it for themselves. But that's not true. We can educate them effectively. And if you're not sure of how to do that just yet, man, you're gonna love what I have for you here. Right? I have a microbook that is called Breaking the Cycle, and you can get it for free right now if you just go to my website, unlocked.com/microbook. That's unlock as if you're unlocking a door, unlock ed past tense, FL as in for life or Florida, right? .com/microbooks. Micro like a little tiny one, book like the thing that you read, right? If you go to that website, you can get that microbook for free and you can start to learn, here's how we can educate children. Here's how we can break out of this cycle. Here's how I can share this with others. And if you read through to the end of that book, there is a link in there if you'd like to chat with me personally about how to do this with your own family. We can do that too. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.